Hello, everyone. We're back with the Simply Trade News Roundup, and I have a fun episode for you today because we'll be talking on some changes that happened last week. So we're recording this April 30th, but yesterday we got some news, which we'll be talking about, and hopefully this will enlighten you a little bit of the situation we're in right now. But first, let me introduce you to my guest, Lenny Feldman. He is a managing partner at Sandler, Travis & Rosenberg and in Miami, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Sunny Florida. Sunny Miami.
Perfect. We love Miami. Well, I want to thank you for joining. First off, we met the first time at NCPFAA, did a quick little interview there. And I knew I needed you on the podcast because I know you talk a lot about this and that's probably all you do is trade, and you're super busy. So I thought, why not make you even busier?
I love it. I love being busy. Who could avoid talking about the Tariff Wonderland? That's what I'm calling it now. The Tariff Wonderland.
Right.
I'm going to do a webinar like that. The Tariff Wonderland. Wait till you see. I have something really cool in mind about that.
Really? Do you? I was thinking we're gonna name this episode now Tariff Wonderland. You did my job. Thank you. Well, I kind of want to mention at first that we are 1 month after liberation. Almost.
That's right.
1 month will be
Are we feeling liberated
2nd.
yet, people?
Huh?
Are we feeling liberated, people? Are we good?
Right. That's a good, we'll do a poll. Good question. So it'd be May 2nd. Actually, fun thing, May 2nd is a really significant day too, because the Minimis is going away for China and Hong Kong. So did an episode on that. Please review it, everyone, because that one is with Marianne Roden. Sorry.
Good.
It's a really good, so listen to it. And I'm sure this one will live up to the same standards. Tell us, we're 1 month after liberation. We've just established that, but kind of tell us what the situation is right now. So we've gone through a lot of situations and it's kind of tough because I don't want you to go through all of them because I think we've done it so many times. And there's a lot in the past that we don't really have to deal with anymore, but we're still dealing with a lot. What are you dealing with currently?
So, well, first, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to see you again and be with you. I wish we were in person, but I'm sure that'll happen soon enough. So, trade, tariffs, I would like to say we're having a moment, but we're having moments because it depends what moment of the day that the executive orders are coming out. It depends what moment of the day or technically what day your goods are being entered, right? If they're entered April 9th, that was the fateful day when we saw the reciprocals rise from that 11% to 50% additive tariff. And you were stuck that day unless you were fortunate enough to escape the tariffs that day because of the in-transit rule. And people are still trying to figure out the in-transit rule. So fast forward, China, the tariffs are just going up and through the roof, right? 125% plus, right? I describe it as the tariff sandwich, that you have these layers to the sandwich. Pick your favorite one. I don't know, Big Mac, Whopper, although I try to stay away from it at this stage of my life. But the sandwich keeps growing layer by layer, and it's getting really hard to take a bite into it and digest it. So the latest news, as you said, is May 2nd, which at the time of this recording is just around the corner, just really almost hours away. And that is going to mark, at least for now, but I never say never, the end of de minimis for goods originating from China and Hong Kong. So I've been receiving lots of calls. I know my colleagues in the trade, in the industry, other counselors, other brokers have been fielding a lot of calls as to how do we restructure our supply chain so we still have that end-to-end compliance and security, yet we are now ready for the informal formal entry process or this postal channel that's been created for less than $800 goods. Long story short, you weren't paying duties on those de minimis shipments from China, Hong Kong, but now you will. But you get to choose your adventure. You could either go into the informal or formal, right? It's fun, your formal or informal entry process. We thought that informal was going to be $250 a pop because the regulation actually has a proviso that says, nope, can't go over 250 per shipment informal if you have trade remedy tariffs involved. That's actually subchapters 3 and 4 to chapter $99. So they went around, they said, no, we're going to suspend that. We're going to allow you to use informal up to $2,500. Again, you're still paying the duties, but you could use the informal channel. And it is a little more informal. You don't necessarily need a bond, but you'd have to pay your duties. So that was interesting. And then the other part of the adventure is postal. That postal, as of Friday, if you go international post, China Post, US Post, not just using US Post at the end domestically, you're looking at 120% ad valorem on the value of your shipment, or you're able to do $100 per shipment or parcel, but that's going to be hiked up to $200 on June 1st. So this is really going to be interesting. And what I find fascinating as a practitioner about it, it's the international carrier secured by the international carrier bond, who's going to be responsible for making sure all of those duties in that postal channel are provided or submitted at least on a monthly basis. And they're going to have to choose that adventure up front. They're going to have to say, myself as the international carrier, I'm going for the ad valorem or I'm going for the flat amount. And you really can't fluctuate unless you give customs notification of that.
So would you say that doing business with China right now is not the answer, or is it the answer? Is it a good answer?
It depends what your options are. I was just talking to a reporter. We had a very interesting discussion in the seafood and fish industry. And I said, I love fish and seafood. We got to figure this out.
Me too. Yeah, you have to. You have to do it for us.
Right? So I said, look, are you able to catch the fish? Are you able to process the fish outside of China? Do you have that flexibility? And this is just kind of emblematic of all commodities. To what extent do you have that agility? Can you go to India? I'm getting bigger and bigger on India. I think there's a lot of potential there. We're hearing good things about potential deals there, right?
I've done a whole episode and we said India should be, but there's, well, we'll get to that later, but trade deals, that's the whole thing.
It's happening. Yeah, it's decoupling from China. I'm hearing more about it. Southeast Asia is still looking good. Mexico, Canada, we're still given the gift. They were given the gift of no tariffs for USMCA qualifying goods to escape the IEEPA fentanyl, depending on how you read it, for goods that originate or substantially transform Mexico, Canada out of the IEEPA reciprocal, and Latin America. And my senator here in Florida for years now, Secretary of State Rubio, has very strong ties and relations, let's not forget, with Latin America and that region. Outside of Cuba, Venezuela, he's very outspoken about that, and understandably so. So I have a thought that that region is not going to be tariffed necessarily in ways that is going to hinder trade there. So I think you have opportunities to, as you said, is China a problem? I think you got to look at your alternatives, or if not, then you have to look at some of the legal ways that you are able to maybe put yourself in a classification provision where all of the tariffs wouldn't apply, perhaps putting yourself on with a lower value. And a lot of folks, again, who are transitioning, this goes back to the de minimis going to non-de minimis dutiable, who's going to be your importer of record, who is going to reflect the value on which you're collecting those tariffs to at least try to get a break if you're still in China.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me to another topic that we just got hit with yesterday, which is stacking tariffs, right? And I think there's been so many questions about stacking tariffs anyways, where people haven't even figured that out. And now we got a new executive order about the stacking tariffs. What? And I've talked to many people now, and they're still decoding because we barely got it yesterday, I believe, the 29th, April 29th. What are you making out of this? Do you think this is, well, it seems to be to an advantage to importers and Americans, right? But what do you make of this?
So there were a few things going on yesterday. Just I kind of am putting it almost like two buckets, but they interrelated. There was a proclamation on auto, giving relief to automakers from the 25% tariffs and offering them credits for portions of tariffs on auto parts that are imported to build vehicles in the U.S., rebates equaling 15% of the value of the company's vehicles assembled in the U.S. So this is an auto assembly, pro-assembly provision, or let's say proclamation or policy that was issued. What I think got a lot of people confused and still is. On the other hand, was this executive order that came out in stacking. And that was pretty wild, because what it did in the stacking is it went through looking at the various tariffs that are, again, think of my tariff sandwich, one on top of the other, whether it was A, as it was listed in Section 2, the automobile and auto parts tariffs, B, the northern border IEEPA fentanyl tariffs, C, the southern border IEEPA fentanyl tariffs, D, the aluminum tariffs, 232, and E, the steel, right? So when you look at that stacking, so to speak, and how that was working, I'm asking myself last night, if A equals B and B equals C and C equals D, does A equal D? I'm trying to like channel my geometry energy, but I learned that I think A does not equal D.
Is the math not mathing? Is the math mathing or is it not?
Because here's the thing, the way I read it, if D applies, then E applies. So you stack those. But if E applies, D also applies. But if A applies, neither B to E applies. But you have to make sure to remember that if B or C applies, D or E do not apply. That's the mathematics. Are we ready for geometry now?
No, I feel I'm going to go back. I'm looking at this document that I have in front of me here.
So I kind of had fun with my Pythagorean tariff theorem last night.
No, it looks like equations. It's giving math, but I'm just, okay, so this is my confusion. So obviously we're all confused and we're all trying to, or not me, because I'm not doing it. You guys are doing it. So how you guys are figuring it out, right? But you can have a different perception than someone else. How are you going to get to this place where all you guys are making the same of this document, right? And importers are doing the right thing or paying the right amount of duties or whatever. Like, how is this going to work out? I don't understand. Do they have to bring out another executive order to really give you the equations to make this work?
How it works. So there's a few things to that. So, we talk about like how a bill becomes a law. If you remember Schoolhouse Rock, on that side, but we're talking the executive branch. We don't really have that. So what happens is it starts with an executive order from the White House. This A equals B, B equals C, C equals D. Does D equal E? Not really, because of the D to E and the A to B and the B to E and all that. So then you go to Federal Register notice. There'll be a Federal Register notice. There'll be a Custom Service Messaging Systems notice, a CSMS notice. Hopefully there'll be some frequently asked questions that are issued from Customs. And if we just can't get a straight answer because it's too complex, nobody's fault, it's just hard to interpret, we may have to wait until we get a ruling from Customs on some of this. But what's really important is to follow the breadcrumbs, Hansel and Gretel. Follow the breadcrumbs, just like the nursery rhyme, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to start with the executive order at that high level, then see how it's fleshed out in the Federal Register, again, the CSMS, hopefully frequently asked questions. Maybe you'll have a nice center director at CBP who says, hey, this is how we're doing it. But here's the thing. All of these at the end of the day have to fit in a nice, cozy 10-digit HTS US number. And the language in that 10-digit HTS US number, which is actually statute and law at that point, has typically some good descriptive language that will help you through it. But hey, to my friends in the brokerage community, the weekend will be here soon. So, maybe you'll be able to think of other things. It's going to be tough to really get the filing right for this. And Customs is really going to need to have a lot of patience in order to make sure that you're stacking the sandwich in the right way. And now understanding that some of the elements or ingredients of that sandwich that we thought had to be stacked do not have to stack. You could actually pull them out of your sandwich.
That's what I see here too. Yeah. Some of it is just, it remains the same and it may stack. Some may stack.
Right. The steel and aluminum are going to stack. And we just asked this question this week and got informal collaboration confirmation that steel, aluminum product, you pay both, right? But this is basically saying with the auto parts, you're going to be fine. Auto parts, again, what we're seeing here, which is interesting, is kind of the trend or the move. Let's help the auto parts folks. Let's help the automotive folks so that, especially if they're in the USMCA region, so that you're not going to apply if there were any China, Mexico fentanyl tariffs. You're not going to apply the steel and aluminum on top of that. So that's where you're kind of taking apart that part of the sandwich where we really weren't sure if they're going to have to stack on each other.
Yeah. And so we got this order, correct? And now, okay, you guys are trying to figure it out. But then I'm thinking about the actual business that needs to price their products correctly to make up for the losses, to make up, because they're not aware. Like maybe they're paying way more right now and they'll get some relief, but you don't really know at this point. So what do you tell them? Like, how do you move forward? You just guess? Is it a guessing game or?
No, I think you have to be, it's a bit of that. Okay. I'm going to be honest, but I think you could be strategic. You have to employ strategery here, So in doing that, first off, you're going to want to really think this through. Take a deep breath, to be frank, and think it through and get that order down. Look at the information that's coming out. Then at that point, take stock at what's coming in. And what's really fascinating about this, at the end of the day, if you look at the tariffs for the autos or the auto parts, 25%, right, which are not stacking on the steel and aluminum, or steel and aluminum, 25%. Coming from China, that's a better deal, so to speak, trade-wise, than bringing toys in from China at 125% plus. It's an either or. And think of it maybe like this. Think of it as of the meat patty of that Whopper Big Mac sandwich that I'm talking about. You actually get to choose whether it's the Wagyu, or you get to choose whether it's the Beyond Burger, or you get to choose as to whether it's just ground beef. There, your beef layer is going to be different based on whether it's a steel and aluminum, or based on whether it's an auto, or based on whether it's neither of those. So that's where a lot of people, I never thought I'd have this in my life, that people are actually asking me, how do I potentially take a toy or a window or a household good and put some steel and aluminum on it so that I could get it into the 25% as opposed to the 125 plus.
Wow. Wow. So we're getting crazy. Okay. But, and see, this is what I'm asking. Do you see this as sustainable? This whole stacking thing, is this sustainable? It's crazy to even ask that because we get something new every week, but do you see it as it's going to work and people are going to figure it out and it's going to be better than what it is now?
I think there's going to be some pros and cons to it. I think the fact that we now are hearing that the autos don't stack in the steel and aluminum, right, and vice versa, I think that's relief to people who are bringing in those commodities. I think that part of it is going to be helpful. Overall, the idea of the stacking, although it is complex, it actually, at a net, should provide some duty relief. That's the bottom line. That overall, this is lessening the burden of the tariffs. It's a complex way to do it, granted, and it's going to take some folks to really look at it carefully and figure out their geometric equation, as I say. But overall, it's a net win.
So you really need someone professional to be doing this for you. I hope at this point, companies are already set with someone that does it for them. But at this point, if you don't have someone who understands this and you're bringing things in from China or from wherever, you really need someone to look at your whole system and supply chain and say, okay, you don't have to pay these tariffs, or you need to be smarter, or whatever, correct?
Absolutely. You really have to communicate. You really have to talk to, whether it's a attorney, whether it's a accountant who's well versed in, the mathematical, generally accepted accounting principles that go with these valuation type concepts, consultants, your brokers. We're all in it together. And I think talking it through with somebody who is very focused on these issues day in and day out is critical. And I'm not just saying that because I'm one of those people. I would say that if I wasn't one of those people.
Yeah. And we just, in the start of this, we talked on trade deals, and I want to talk about something that has been in the news recently. There's not much to talk about, but Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, we've heard lots from him. And he said there's a done deal with whatever country, didn't mention the country.
A mystery country. There's a
mystery country. Yes. It's an adventure.
And now we're playing Clue. Clue. Is that Colonel Mustard in the parlor with the trade deal?
We don't know. But you know what? Imagine it's India. I think India would be great. I don't think it's India.
Would be big. So you're thinking India. I was going to go with maybe Vietnam, because I know Vietnam's been visiting. It could be Japan, South Korea. I'm leaning Asia, right? I'm thinking Asia. I know Vietnam had said they were going to dismantle their tariffs a few weeks ago. I do know from credible sources that Vietnam delegations have been in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So you think this will be kind of a counterbalance, like from China's influence, kind of gearing towards, yeah?
I think so. I think that's what we're looking at. Could it be South Korea? Could it be Japan? I put them as my second choices, but I'm also telling folks, keep your eye on India, because I think things are moving in the right direction there. And I think that has a lot of potential, good potential.
And in your opinion, trade deals are going to just make this industry, I don't know, better, I would say, right? I mean, that's what this industry needs, correct?
So I think trade deals are a good thing. I think to the point and the extent that you're able to lower tariffs, you're able to get reciprocal tariffs. Look, at the end of the day, our tariffs have always been low. I mean, let's be real about it. Overall, our tariffs have been between 2.53%. And you look at our trading partners, their tariffs have been higher. So if we are able to achieve that equilibrium, that's a good thing. But people really need those options outside of China. And then, of course, there's the America First trade policy, which is national economic security. And how do you build that? By domestic manufacturing. So we really need to have those programs and incentives to do that. But in order to be a successful domestic manufacturer, you're going to need to have the ability to import some of your inputs. You need to import your inputs. Right? If you can't, and that's going to be really high, that's going to curtail your domestic manufacturing. So it really is a seesaw to get to that, if you will, homeostasis, to that good equilibrium where ostensibly this is, I think, the administration's plan. It's not necessarily the Feldman plan, but I'm just saying, calling it out, to build that domestic manufacturing, give it a shot. But to do so, you have to look at the inputs that really are going to be needed, unless they can be made domestically, produced in the U.S. And how long will that take? In some cases, you might be able to do that. In some cases, you probably won't. So industry by industry. It's industry by industry.
So we'll see if it's India or Japan or Vietnam.
That's exciting. Yeah,
but it'll be good. Yeah, right? So that's exciting.
And I think China's going to go down. I think what we're hearing from Bissett, Lutnick, from the White House is this isn't where China and the United States should be. I think it's going to go down. I don't think it's going to go down to 10%. But I think it's going to go down.
I think there will be a trade deal done with most countries, but until then, we're going to see tariffs.
Right.
The stacking tariffs. But who knows? I mean, I don't know. We get an update every week, right?
It's fluid.
So that's really, and then what else do we have? Nothing much other than USMCA being up for review in 2026.
That's interesting. It's kind of sort of been up for review. I would say the last few months it's being reviewed based on all these different policies, right? But let's see what that looks like right now. Again, Mexico, Canada, looking good. Let's see what happens now as a result of the elections, new prime minister in Canada. I don't think they're going to be bellying up, him and Trump, but we'll see. I think Sheinbaum is doing quite a good job from the Mexico side. I also serve as counsel to the North American Customs Brokers Alliance. And we've been having some very good, productive discussions from the brokerage leadership in Mexico, US, and Canada to really encourage our administrations to move thoughtfully, to move intelligently, let's say, towards the new USMCA and what that impact would look like. So those discussions are ongoing. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be in Mexico this summer and probably Canada right after that.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to those changes. Not that we don't have enough changes going on, but I think change is always good. Anyways, if our listeners have any more questions, please record them to Lenny. Not sure if he'll answer you, but maybe he will. And otherwise, you can also ask those questions to us and we can forward them to Lenny or whoever could answer your questions. I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us details on the current changes and updates. And obviously, we'll still be notified for how exactly you'll be doing that, which will be interesting. And maybe it'll get rid of your sleepless nights.
Could do it. And I hope everyone enjoys the stacking. Enjoy your stackables.
Enjoy those equations. Yeah. Well, I hope you have an incredible rest of your day. You too, Lenny. And we'll see each other soon, hopefully sometime at a conference.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on Simply Trade and chatting trade with you all.
Yeah, this is actually your first time with me, so that's different, right? Because I'm not Lalo and I'm not Andy, not much. I'm not trade professional at all, but I'm learning, and you guys just give me all the meat. We've been talking a lot of food. I'm hungry now.
There you go.
That's what I'm about to do. So thank you so much for listening, guys. And we will be back next week, Monday. I'm not sure what we'll talk about yet because things always change. But for now, hope you enjoyed this episode. And please let us know how you like it. And if you have any questions, have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.